Thank you. You guys were far too kind. Yeah, TradeMark'd. Excited to be joined by my friend today, Miss Christina Calloway, Esquire. We're going to take a little time and actually talk about intellectual property, patents, copyrights, and everything else in between. You know, I'm so glad to have you guys join us today. And it's just kind of one of those cool things when we talk about, trademarks. And for me, when I think about the word trademark, the first thing that comes to mind for me is like the word legacy. Legacy. I think it's all about legacy. It's about being able to pass something on to your children's children. It's like, we get excited that we have this opportunity to be creative. We have an opportunity to kind of be able to go next level. And to now have a real live attorney with us, I just think it's amazing. So let's give a warm hand. Welcome, Ms. Christina Calloway, Esquire.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And thank you for really taking a step to find out the information that you need for whatever business or big creative ideas that you may have in your head, and understanding that is a huge part of your legacy. And thank you for joining us this evening. I just want to start with a few basic things, some disclaimers, some housekeeping. I am an attorney at the United States Patent and Trademark Office, which registers trademarks as well as patents. Although I am a government attorney, I'm not the voice for the office. So I just want to be clear that any information that you're receiving from me is not necessarily endorsed by the agency, but that I do work at the agency, and any information that you are receiving can be found at the United States Patent and Trademark Office website, which is uspto.gov, as well as, just because you ask me questions or we're having this discussion, that this does not create an attorney-client relationship. I'm just providing information that I am not your attorney. If you want any further information, I'm happy. Tony can send out the information, my direct information, as well as providing you with any referrals for whatever state you're in. I have a large and great network of attorneys who practice intellectual property, and I'd be happy to provide you with their information. So we're just going to get into it. What does intellectual property mean for your business? We're going to really just talk about trademarks and copyrights. And I say that because when I'm usually speaking with small businesses or creators, that's really the type of intellectual property that you're looking at. But there are 4 types of intellectual property. That's trademarks, that's copyrights, that is patents, and that's also trade secrets. Trade secrets we won't really get into, but trade secrets are basically any type of formula or process that you want to have protection for. So if you think about like the Coca-Cola recipe, that would be a trade secret. So first, I want to say congratulations if you started a business, if you have an idea, if you're thinking about that, especially during the pandemic. This is definitely the time we kind of have more time to really focus on things that you may be passionate about or want to build up and maintain, or figuring out how to pivot your business. That's the word of the year, right? Pivot your business. So congratulations on that. What is intellectual property? What does that mean for your business, and why do you need that for your business? Trademarks are basically when you're protecting a brand name or a logo for your goods, indoor services. Copyright is for literary and artistic works, and patents are for inventions. So just to break it down in kind of a simple example, if you think about the Hoover vacuum, the vacuum is the actual invention. That's what you would get a patent for. The name Hoover is the trademark. That's what you would get a trademark registration for. And the jingle that they may create, the famous Hoover vacuum song, that would be copyright. That's an artistic work, a literary work. They've hired somebody to create that music or jingle for them, and that is what you would get a copyright for. So those are the type, the copyright and trademark is what we'll kind of be discussing this evening. So what does that mean for your business? Intellectual property or receiving a trademark registration, that's voluntary. You don't have to get it. Not that you don't need it, but you don't have to get your trademark registered. So why would you get it registered? Why would you spend the money to get it registered? There are a few reasons why you would do that. It's a presumption of ownership. Tony just talked about legacy. That means that you own it. It is yours. It's mine. It is your company's. This is just a presumption of ownership. And you're also putting the public on notice that this is owned by someone, by an entity, and that is yours, that you have protection against that. as well as you can use that federally registered trademark symbol. So when you see that R with the little circle around it, that means that a mark is registered. And then you would be able to further use that on anywhere that you have your name or logo or brand. Once it's registered, you could put that, and that puts the public on notice that this is a federally registered trademark. The ability to bring actions against it. So if you don't have a registered trademark, if someone tries to steal it or uses it, you may not have, I mean, you can fight it against legally, but you have a better basis and support for fighting against that if you have it federally registered with the USPTO. And as well as if you're doing any type of international commerce, which I'll tell you now, if you're on the internet providing services or any goods that are going interstate or internationally, you're in international commerce, that it allows you, being federally registered with the US, to be able to get those registrations in other countries, because you'd have to go into another country to get a federal registration. But most of the time they are looking for your US registration. So it allows you to do that. When that business of yours gets big and blows up and goes into the international, you now have those protections as well in other countries. So let's just talk about the basic process to get a trademark, to file a trademark application. You would go to the website, the uspto.gov. That's where you can find a lot of great information and resources, and file an application. So I'm going to just go basically through the fees and filing fees, and please interject if you have any questions about that. So a paper application is $600. And then if you're filing electronically, that's $200. The minimum is $225. So I see Tony had a little face about how much that costs.
So quick question, and I heard you catch it. So I heard $600 for a paper application, and then you said the electronic one was at $225?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we talking about it, that's a major price difference. So like, what is, I mean, you know, where does this a 370 additional 375? Like, is paper a better version of it, or is the electronic? I mean, why the discrepancy in the price?
Yeah, it's really just your choice. If you prefer paper, from that price discrepancy, the office is trying to push people to kind of file those applications electronically. You can still file paper, but that's just the price. It's just more administrative processing as opposed to just doing it online through our system, what we call the TEAS system, going online and filing that application and doing it online. And so what we call the TEAS Plus is basically the $225 you file electronically, and that's, you're saying that you're allowing the office to communicate with you electronically by email, as well as when you indicate your goods, indoor services, that you're pulling something directly out of what we call our identification manual. You're pulling something directly out. You're not trying to say, oh, I'm doing this and whatever, and trying to input it yourself. If it is candles that you're making, you're pulling that out of the ID manual and saying candles, and that's the $225. And then we have a
plug.
a TEAS.
MeTonyRalph.com plug.
Yeah. So, and then the TEAS reduced fee is $275, and that's where you're saying, you can contact me electronically as well. I'm going to file electronically, but I want to be able to input certain information into the application that is not directly from the office's prompts. And so you just have to pay that extra $50. So that's $275. So it's
what was that? What was the additional 50 for again?
It's if you're filing electronically, but you're still, but you want to put in your own specific information that's not directly from the office's prompts in the application.
So if it needs to be a little more detailed, depending on what the server.
Yeah, it's really just personal preference of what you want to file. So if you're better with paper, just have an understanding that, or want to move forward with a paper application, just have that understanding that the price is going to be $600 to file a trademark application. So it's really your preference. It's just whatever you want to do or what you feel more comfortable with.
And my question is, okay, so we understand paper, $600, digital is going to be $225. Time frame from the time you file, like what does that look like? And like, say for instance, right now we are, we about 3 months from the next year, if you will. But how long does stuff really take to get processed through the system? And right now, are you guys seeing a lot more? What do I need to know, or what should I do in the time frame for right now?
Yeah, so from the start to finish, so say a trademark application, that once you file the application, that you have about a 2 month period, 2 to 3 month period where it's actually reviewed by an examining attorney, someone like me who is looking at the application and reviewing it and make sure that everything is fine and that the application meets all the requirements to move forward to registration. So that's about 2 to 3 months. If you have no issues, you can probably look to getting your trademark registered within a period of about 5 to 6 months from the time that you file. If there are issues with your application or you're receiving notices or notification from the office that you need to correct certain issues, or that you have a likelihood of confusion, which I'll talk about briefly, then it may be a little longer. It's going to take a little longer. There's really no way to really say, oh, this from this date is the time that because it just depends on the application and if there are any issues. Tony, are we still connected?
Cool. So now I know we've talked about from a federal perspective, but like, how does that relate to what they're doing in the states? I mean, like, is that something different? Is that protected? I mean, because I've heard that they have, I guess, state trademarks or state, I don't know if it's a state patent or what, but I know that they have that, but how does that relate? Because I know you do the federal thing. So like, what does that look like?
So there is state registration and then federal registration. So state means that you're only going to have that trademark registration in your state. And so that only protects you for whatever state that you're doing business in or selling goods in. Federal registration is going to protect you for federally, the entire United States, as well as the U.S. territories. So I mean, would usually say that you would want to do that state. The fees differ depending on whatever state you're in, and usually can find that information on like your Secretary of State, wherever you go to actually file your businesses or your legal entities. But if you're doing interstate commerce, if you're doing anything over the internet, if you're working with people in other states, that's not going to protect you. It's only going to protect you when you have issues in whatever state that you're based in. Federal protection is going to be everywhere.
So literally, if I make a product in Georgia and do it for Georgia, but then have an issue with somebody in Illinois, my Georgia stuff don't count. And hey, maybe somebody calling to tell us about the state. They probably say go federal. That's what the phone number is right now. But yeah, I mean, you're just saying for state protection, or state protection is just for that state. It's just not federal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Since we're talking about this, another quick question.
You have to think about that in terms of what you want for your business, and that's something that comes along with your business plan. Nobody can tell you what you want for your business or what you're going to anticipate for your business. That's something that you have to determine. And for most people, I would assume if you have a business, you want that business to be successful, and it's probably going to be outside of the state that you're doing the work in, that you base your business in.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think because it's interesting.
Yeah. Most people are doing things online, and you have to think about also the time that we're in, right? We're in the midst of a pandemic. Mm-hmm. Most people can't have their shops open. Well, in my state, I don't know about Georgia. Georgia,
we've been lit since April. It's like, what? Oh, no, fam.
But you have to think about that, right? Or maybe personally, you're like, I'm not going to open my brick and mortar store. I want to keep my customers safe, my patrons safe, as well as my staff and myself safe. Right. So most people are moving to an online format. So you have to think about that as well.
So let's talk. I mean, you hit on one word, and I love this. You were talking about a business plan. Like, really and truly, how much should we plan for our business?
I think you have to, that's something you're thinking about. I understand you have great ideas and you start your businesses and you don't really think about those aspects because maybe you figured out a way to solve a problem and that's what your business caters to, or your niche or what have you. But thinking about what you actually want your business to accomplish in goals. I don't really know how, if you're an entrepreneur, how you're moving forward if you don't have that type of vision for your business and where it want to go. And that's where your intellectual property and that legacy comes into play. Yes, most businesses start as a small business. I was talking to Tony about Apple was a small business. But if Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, what they wanted their business to be, it may not be what we know now as Apple. So every business starts as a small business. They're starting in a garage. You have to think about that and what you want for your business. So whatever it is, if you're selling candles, yes, you might be start selling it to friends and start selling it to church, your church members and things like that. But you also have to think about that in the context of where you want your business to go. And for most people, I would assume if you're an entrepreneur that you want it to be successful and grow beyond that.
I planned that ding for those that heard that. That was message. If you're selling candles, you can go to meettonyross.com and get your candles.
Yeah.
But no, that's all. I mean, I think you bring up such a great point, and it's something that it seems so simple, but yeah, Apple started as a small business.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it with Apple in a garage, Facebook in a dorm room. I mean, you almost have to see the end from the beginning. And granted, a lot of times, people just don't have the money going into it, but it's almost like, I just look at it, because I think one of the things that you had told me about is like people end up, you can pay for it up front and you can chase it down later. And I think it may be less expensive to pay for it up front.
You definitely want to be proactive with your intellectual property, any aspect of your business. I understand for small businesses and for individual creators, sometimes, looking at the fees, like I just talked about the fees that you're saying, oh, that's a lot of money. I don't want to put that investment into it. But just like anything with your business, that's an investment for your business. I'm sure if you're consulting with an attorney or even your tax account, your CPA, either writing those things off or figuring out how you can do that. But that's very important. The name of your business is important. If someone steals it, there are people who literally have to create a new name for their business that people have been patronizing because somebody has stolen the name, and they either won't give it back or they've started something else under that name. And now you're like, I can't even use that. It happens all the time. So you have to think about that even before it happens. Be proactive instead of reactive, because trust me, $225 or $275 is nothing compared to fighting or hiring an attorney to write cease and desist letters or fighting someone for a name that you came up with and you put your blood, sweat, and tears into building.
And now let me ask this, with that 225, because I think that's probably where most people are going to see it from a digital perspective, to get federally registered is 225. Is that a trademark as well? Is that trademark at 225? Because if so, it seems like the price might have went down, because I think I paid more, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out, that looks like a better pricing of a number, but maybe I'm missing something.
That's the different levels. So that's the filing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the filing fee. So that's what you're going to pay. If you're coming in what we call use in commerce, where you're going to show us that I'm already using this mark in commerce, then yes, that's, if you choose the what we call a T's plus, the $225, that's a flat fee. If it goes through with no problems, that's what you pay to get your registration. If you do what we call an intent to use, where you file an application and you're just telling the office, this is what I intend to do with this mark, but you haven't started using it in commerce yet, then you would pay an additional fee, which is $100. That's something we're getting deep into, but you would pay an additional fee where you would follow up and show us that I'm actually using my mark in commerce. Because a trademark is for use in commerce. So you can file before having ever used the mark, but you're going to have to eventually show that I'm using the mark in commerce. So let me give you an example.
Yeah, okay.
Beyonce's daughter's name is Blue Ivy. She filed to register Blue Ivy as a mark for assorted goods and services when her daughter was just a baby. Celebrities and famous people do that oftentimes because they don't want somebody to steal their child's name and make money off of their child's name based upon who their parents are. Blue Ivy was also the name of a registered company for wedding services, Blue Ivy Event Planning or something of that nature. And they're in a fight with Beyonce and Jay-Z about the use of that name. And the argument that the wedding company is saying, this is something you can Google, is saying that they are not using the mark for the goods and services that they've come in for. So that's when I'm saying that you can come in and file the application. I haven't used it yet. This is an idea that I have for a company, but you're going to have to eventually show that you're using the mark for those goods and indoor services that you've identified in your application.
Oh, wow. So like in that, since it's public knowledge, and of course you're not divulging secrets that no one can find out, who registered first?
So that is something that you have to think about. If you already have that idea, so what we learn in law school with intellectual property is that nobody has an idea for the first time. If you had an idea about something, somebody else has thought about that too. It's just about who gets to it first to have that ownership. So if you have a trademark for your business, or a name or logo or brand name for your business, then you have filing priority. Even if you don't have the registration yet, if someone comes behind you and you're first in line, you have that priority for yours to move forward because they've come after you.
So here's an interesting question, and I think because you're hitting on something really, really strong about, registration. How does this relate to web addresses, like websites and all that kind of stuff?
So you can register a domain names, not necessarily a website, but domain names that you have. So if you're thinking about like Amazon.com, that is a registered trademark. You have to be using it in a source identifying manner, which basically means that when people see that, they understand the source of those goods and/or services. So I don't know the exact what the services are for like Amazon.com, but that is, you are able to do that as far as a name, not necessarily a web address, but what we would call a domain name.
So as like in terms of,
so
because domain name would be the .com, but that's like if that's a part of their name, like Zappos, like Zappos.com,
yes.
that would be the domain name, but then there's also, I guess, a trademarkable setup based off of what the service or what the name of the business or brand is.
Yes.
Okay.
But you're using it in a source indicating manner. So Zappos, I believe when you order things, that Zappos.com is on the packaging, Zappos.com
right.
on the box. They're using it in a source identifying manner. You see Zappos.com and don't just think of like, oh, this is the web address. That is actually the company's logo or brand name.
That's so interesting. Like, I'll tell you, because I mean, it's one of those things to where, being in branding, is so many layers and levels. And I'm going to tell you, for all the entrepreneurs out there, once again, get a good lawyer or at least get some great information. That's the whole point of us even having this conversation with Ms. Calloway, Esquire. But it's really to be able to have information readily available, because the reality is this is a lot to download. I mean, you could search on Google for a long time and still miss it. At least right now, we have direct access to information of showing you what you need. So let's do a quick recap. If we're going to file a paper application, does anybody remember how much it costs? $600. So remember, now if we don't want to do paper, what's a better route? You could go digital and you pay how much? $225. So again, to get your trademark, I mean, you think about it, $225 over the course of 1 month, we're talking about what? If not even, $65 a week, maybe? I don't know. Chrissy, check my math. I was like, what?
I mean, I'm
like, look, check my math, Chrissy. Look, I'm not sure if I'm right.
I'm not good at math, but you have to think about
it. Somewhere right along in there. So let's just say it's what, 50 would be 200. So let's just say it's 60 and 65. So I think 60 would be 140. So this about, so somewhere around there. Anyway,
think I say that to say investment for your business, right? You started a business. I'm sure you've had to put money. I mean, I'm talking about simple stuff, even printing out flyers to let people know about your business, or what you're paying to have your website live. Those are investments into your business. So you have to think about that. Aside even from intellectual property, and I believe, Tony, we've talked about this, that you have to think about it in that way. If you have family that you want to support you, or friends, and there's someone that you present them with your business plan and say, this is what I need. If you don't have it now, or feel like I don't have the money to put into that, but you have to think about that. Even if you don't have the money, there are resources. You can, like I said, go directly to uspto.gov and find out information there about filing trademarks. If you're into trademarks or patents, copyrights, you would go to the copyrights office, copyrights.gov. You go directly to those websites, and there are always frequently asked questions, how-tos, or steps to walk you through the application process. But also, I know in law school, I work for the Georgia Lawyers for the Arts, and that is specifically basically like legal aid for artists and creatives. So if you're, being an artist can sometimes not be a very stable career as far as money. if you meet certain criteria, then you can receive legal aid for certain things that you need to do. So it's just going and finding out that information. And I know most states have things like that. You can check with state bars, or most organizations are usually called whatever state for the arts. So like Georgia's Georgia Lawyers for the Arts. Here in the DMV area, Washington Lawyers for the Arts. And it's basically, like I said, legal aid for artists and creatives.
So there's resources that are available. You know, one of the things, we had a question that came in earlier. It was asking about provisional patents. Do you know like the price point, or like what's the setup or requirement for those? Because I think, because one thing, everybody watches Shark Tank, and you know, about the trademarks and stuff.
So yeah, so when you're thinking of, that's exactly, Shark Tank is a great example of people bringing in inventions, and they would need to be going through a process to file for a patent for that invention. Again, that example, whatever the name they have for that invention is what you would be coming into TradeMark'd to get registered for a trademark. So patents, it begins with an application that starts at $110. I don't work on the patent side, but I do know that general information. And they can usually take a little bit longer because they're looking at the nuances of the patent. It's basically an invention, and they have people who have engineering degrees, science background, chemical science, and engineering backgrounds, and they're the ones that will be reviewing those types of applications, and usually can take, it's going to take longer than 3 to 6 months, basically. It can go on for years. It just depends on what issues that you have with those patent applications, and they are very, very detailed. I don't know if I would recommend someone attempting to do a patent application by themselves without any legal assistance.
Makes sense. Makes a lot
You
of sense.
can, but I mean, with anything you can. If you get in trouble with a criminal issue, you can represent yourself. That's your right in this country.
Right.
But to definitely, you know, want to make sure things go through is to seek out legal assistance.
And I'm gonna tell you guys, for those that are listening, yeah, Christy also was my personal trademark attorney 10 years ago before she started her government job. And I say that to say it's like it makes sense, because here's the thing: I tried to submit it on my own, and I didn't. The information just wasn't right. So it just made sense. It's like, you know what? Let me say, because you got to think, how much time can I save by making a simple investment, by getting something that I know that I am putting all of this money into, and I want it to last, and something I need to be, you know, something I need to hold up. Seek it, like she said, she's literally saying to seek out that legal counsel. Again, like she said, you can represent yourself or do whatever, but sometimes you need to make sure stuff is done right. Because it's better to pay a little bit up front than having to pay so much more in the back end because you missed something, and then somebody came in and, you know, maybe not even on purpose, but snaked it out from under you, and it's just like you don't have anything to show for it. So I mean, you know, please get some, you know, you get some people. And one thing too, Christy, one, you mentioned this earlier about just kind of like finding resources for attorneys. Like, what does that look like in terms of? I know that, you know, you have people like, what would you say to somebody who said, I don't have any connections, I barely got any money, I know that I can pay $225, but how do I find an attorney that, I mean, attorney for attorney, but how do I find an attorney that kind of can help me in this process, like in this moment of what I'm looking for? It's almost like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have questions that they don't even know to ask. So what is that like? I guess give us a framework of what that is, if you will.
So you're seeking out those resources, like I said, like Georgia Lawyers for the Arts, those type of organizations, if you're into arts or creative or a small business, even if it's something like legal aid, because they can always refer you to where you might need to go. Legal aid is usually for like landlord-tenant issues, family law, but even if you reach out to them, they could direct you to where you would need to go for a particular type of practice area. Look at state bars. So bar associations are what attorneys need to attorneys have to be licensed with to practice in a particular state. Federal trademark law is federal, so you can hire an attorney in any state because they can come and practice before the United States Patent and Trademark Office as long as they're barred in any state. But in your state, you can directly go to the bar association. So I keep saying Georgia because I'm from Georgia, even though I'm located in the DMV area. But you would go to the Georgia State Bar, and they actually have a link that says find an attorney, and you can do it by practice areas. So for what we're talking about today, the practice area would be intellectual property law. It also crosses over with what we would call contract law or business law. If you have a business and you're seeking a business attorney, usually more times than not, a business attorney is able to also work on your intellectual property stuff as well.
And look, you just brought that up, and my first question was, well, what would I use a business attorney for? Because matter of fact, because I mean, there's so many attorneys that do so many different things, but specifically a business attorney, I'm guessing they may double dip, and kind of be able, like you mentioned, to do trademarks and stuff. Yeah. But what would that person look like? I mean, although I know you handle trademarks or trademarks, but like, what is that business? Since you mentioned the business attorney, what is that person or that entity as we relate, as entrepreneurs and people in business or starting businesses?
Yeah, so business attorneys are usually going to focus on legal entities forming whatever type of legal entity that you are as a business. So they don't do like accounting and things like that, but they help you with that type of information, how to set up your business. And that crosses over with what kind of contracts you need for your business. Say, for instance, if you are an event planner, you have vendor contracts that you need to have in place that are already set and done, and that's what you would give to people who are hiring you for your services, as well as they would probably cross over into any intellectual property. If you have any issues that come into with another entity as far as disagreements, if you have a partner, dissolution of your business or different things, or helping you change your business entity for tax purposes, that's what a business attorney is going to be assisting you with. So it's kind of like all encompassing everything that you do with your business.
Got it. Just having somebody, because I'm gonna just tell you what I'm realizing, and this is doing this, I guess, at this, as a matter of fact, after fact. So, like, what does that normally look like?
If you could just repeat your question, I had a little bit going out.
Yeah, I was like, it was one of those, Skylar, not. Let's see. My question was, in so many times from a business perspective, we talked about the business attorneys, but like a lot of times people come and get an attorney when they need an attorney,
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, what is that? That's because to me, I mean, I ain't trying to pay no money. I ain't got no problems. But what about, what is that the right approach or what exactly?
And that's the issue that, when I'm speaking to especially small business owners, minority, that's women and minority ethnicities, when we're talking about people who own businesses or creating, is that they're thinking about that. People only come to attorneys when they have an issue. And that's why they sometimes have an issue with how much attorneys cost and things like that. But if you're being proactive, then you're hiring an attorney so that you don't have those issues come up, so that your contracts are in place. So when you have to give a contract to someone for services or things like that, you already have those things in place. And that if they have an issue with your services or goods, because in business, unfortunately, sometimes that's going to happen. Somebody is not going to like what you're doing, that you can point back to that contract. You're not going back and forth and saying, we had this oral agreement and things like that, and she said this and he said that you already have those things in place. You're trying to handle those things on the front end. Trust me, you're going to spend more money on the back end dealing with issues. And like I said, I know attorneys have that. The thing about attorneys and the reputation attorneys have, all this money, I only go to an attorney when I have an issue or when I have an issue. If you're running a business or something of that nature, you want to have an attorney on the front end so that you're not having those issues.
That's good. That's good. And I guess at this point, what I'd like to ask is almost like, if it was day one, you know what you know now, what would you tell an entrepreneur, especially as in regards to trademarks, copyrights? What would you tell them? I mean, and I know we've had a great conversation even so far, but if it's day one, they're just starting, what would you tell them? What would be the first thing you tell them to do?
As opposed to, in reference to intellectual property?
All of it, yeah. Because here's the deal. Because you know how it always starts. I mean, you mentioned this earlier. You said, okay, if you get an idea, more than likely somebody else has had the idea. So it's like, all right, so now I had the idea. Is my next move to go get that $225 to go make sure I file this TEAS? Or should I because I guess the one thing people can run into, the longer you wait, the further back you are in line, right? So I guess that's what I'm just trying to make sure. If there's kind of like that last piece of information or that last bit of thing that you really want to convey to people, the importance behind it, like what do they need to do?
I think you have to think about that. So that comes along with your business plan. I know a lot of times when someone starts a business, or we hear about these inspirational stories of how people started a business in their kitchen or something of that nature, they probably weren't thinking about that. They just had a problem they knew, or something, an invention, and they needed to be fixed, and they had the solution for it, and they started doing it or selling it and things like that. But we see a lot of times, I mean, there are so many movies and so many books about, you know, people stealing songs or stealing inventions, that you kind of have to be thinking about that. Even though you have this small thing, you're like, I just want to make, you know, these hair products out of my kitchen and sell them to people because I know they help with people's hair. Somebody else is going to see that, or see that you haven't protected that, and they're already thinking in their mind, this is profitable. So you have to be thinking about that, even though you're like, I just want to help people. But you want to protect that also. It's your legacy. Even if you don't have children and family, I mean, not even thinking about that. This is a legacy of some idea that you had for people, or that's helping people, or a good service or product, that you need to be thinking about that. So yeah, you should be thinking about your intellectual property when you start a business. If you begin making music, you should be thinking about your intellectual property, because to me, I mean, what's the point of starting a business if it's not going to be successful? Nobody goes in the business to not be successful, I would assume, if you're an entrepreneur. So if you're thinking about that and you want to be successful, that you need to be having that on your mind. And putting that in your business plan and thinking about that. So many times we don't. I mean, I can rattle off examples of where, especially for Black people, for women, that it's just taken, and that's it. They either, I mean, that doesn't mean I mean, most of the time, those people, they can come up with one thing, they can come up with something else. They're that intelligent and smart. But to think about protecting something that they've come up with. I mean, little things, you know, McDonald's. I don't know if people seen that movie. McDonald's, the man who we know McDonald's to be the president and CEO of, did not create McDonald's.
Right, Ray Kroc.
It's not his last name.
Movie.
It's somebody
Great
else's
movie.
last name. Right. That's a movie that you can see, and that's directly about intellectual property. He saw something profitable and took it and ran with it. And the people whose name is on the McDonald name is a family name. They're not the ones that are known.
Nope.
It's someone else who it wasn't his family name. He worked for the company. Yeah. So you have
to hustle the deal.
I hate to like that damper on it.
To your point, hustle the deal. They ended up signing some paperwork, didn't have a lawyer, and it was like, you didn't, you know.
I mean, he made it bigger, but the family that actually created it did not profit off of that.
Right. Exactly. And you think, I know you look at it years later, they're probably like kicking themselves just from that aspect. I mean, you know, it's because it's, you know, you think about it, and I'm sure you understand this too, but having a business is like, you know, it's like taking care of a child or a pet. I mean, that's how people explain it. Yeah. That's how people explain it as a child. Yeah. Because you birth it from, you know, you have it come from here, you birth it to the world, if you will, and then it's like you got to nurture it, you got to literally sacrifice for it, you put so much stuff into it, and then it's almost like having somebody come and kidnap your baby. I know it's probably a little far, but I'm just saying having something taken from you, especially, you know, and I've had ideas taken, you know, for me, and that's why I'm very particular. Like, I don't talk to nobody about nothing until I got it trademarked, until I got it locked down some kind of way to be able to prove something. Just because I don't want to have things end up like, you know, the next Facebook thing or whatever, if you will, or something that I don't want to lose like that. But let me ask you this question, and this is something that comes up a lot. The poor man's copyright, is that a real thing or what exactly?
So poor man's copyright, so just to give a little background, a copyright is for literary and artistic works. It's also voluntary. You don't have to get your copyright registered. A copyright is immediate as the moment that you create whatever it is. So as soon as you write the book, that's a copyright. Nobody knows about it. You're doing it in your home, writing your book. As soon as you write the song and put it on paper or record it, that is a copyright. But we have to think about what the protection is, just like trademark. Why am I getting this registered? Because you want to put the public on notice. You want to be able to protect it against someone else trying to take it or use it. So that's why you would get a registration. But a poor man's copyright is basically that it's an idea that if I write something that I send it to myself and this shows on the date that I created this, don't do that. It's voluntary that you have to get registered, but you can't fight against that. There's no way for you to be able to prove that you sent this and this is the date and things like that. You need to get a copyright registration.
So
Copyright registrations are significantly less than trademark registrations. I think at the base it starts at, let me look at my notes really quickly just to make sure I'm giving you the
ladies and gentlemen, she got notes. She's prepared. She's ready.
But for a copyright, the initial application is $45.
Okay, so initial application for a copyright. So if somebody wrote a book, $45 will get your book copywritten for you. Is that correct?
You receive that copyright. I mean, copyright is created the moment that you create whatever artistic or literary work. So what the law says is that it is in tangible form. So as soon as you write that song and record it, not just you're singing it because that doesn't record it on anything, but you write it down or you record it or you're filming something or choreography that you filmed or something like that, that is immediately copyrighted. But to register it, then you would go into the office to say, I wrote this book, this is my name, it is federally registered, and now it is protected.
And the registration is what's needed to be able to prove something in court.
That is correct. That is exactly correct.
So once again, now that's very, very good. So we done found out. And I mean, because I know y'all are probably like me. Y'all have heard the poor man's copyright. So don't do that. Mm-hmm. And a regular copyright, $45. That's what the initial filing fee. There may be additional fees, but $45 to get your book copyrighted. Does that go for dance and stuff too? Is that dances as well?
Yeah, there are different aspects. Yeah.
Oh, different. Okay.
But yeah.
So make sure you see an attorney or study online.
Artistic or literary works. So yes, you can have choreography copywritten.
And it's almost like, because you think about it, in the grand scheme, it's not that expensive when you really break it down. Because to know that, I've written some books, but to know that $50 or $45 will get your books registered. Now, does that include like registration with the Library of Congress, or is that different?
That is the Copyright Office is a part of the Library of Congress.
Got it. So that's how, because I know we went through that process. I just didn't know. Sometimes I'm gonna be honest. This is why even this conversation is making me start to think even more about my intellectual property, because that was the biggest thing with my personal stuff. And as I'm saying it for myself, I'm sure for everybody that's listening, it's like, guys, you got to be protected. Like, you don't know what you have now. Because I mean, like, and one thing Christina mentioned, so many stories of people having things taken. Because I think one story was the lady that created the Matrix and like Terminator. I think it was hard for her to prove or something like that, or something. I mean, it's a whole nother.
And that's what it's going to come down to, because it's kind of like evidence, right? You go into any court, even civil court, for these types of things, you have to have evidence. You're just saying, oh, well, I sent it to myself.
Right.
You can't prove, you might just be saying that. There's no way for a judge to really know. And like I said, what we learn is that if somebody has an idea, I mean, something as simple as writing a song, somebody else has had that same idea. Trust. It doesn't mean that they say
somebody else
there are no original ideas.
Right.
That's what they say. That's the saying. There are no original ideas. It's just whoever was able to bring that to market first, right? Steve Jobs did not create the computer. He did not invent the computer. He may have made certain things better as far as operating systems and things like that. But there were people, I'm sure they were fighting with even to get that out and bring that out, or tell people, no, we're here doing this first. So you have to think about that. It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to unpack. I mean, we're just, scratching the surface, and this is just general. But I want to drive home just this basic information about what type of intellectual property there is and why it should be important to you to protect that.
It's so crazy in a good way. I mean, because even when you were just saying that about Steve Jobs, he did not invent the computer, but he invented Apple computers. And it's almost like that's why that brand name is so important, because the brand itself, I used to tell people all the time, an idea is everything, but that brand is what'll separate
is what
separates you from everything else, because that is what your particular offering that makes it different from somebody else. And when you got the IP to, when you got the IP to back it up, it's case in point. What is it that slimming shapewear was always a thing, but then you got Sarah Blakely come through with Spanx, who is a registered trademark. That's Spanx. Now you might have, it may be Joe Schmo knockoff, but people are gonna, they look at it and they kind of assume, or they see it as Spanx, because they've been so good at that branding side of it and owning what it is in that space.
Very important. It's very important, and it's just something that you have to think about. I support entrepreneurship. It makes this country go round. I mean, that's we're one of the, if not the only country in the world that you can start at the very bottom and you can make it all the way to the top. And really the only way that you can do that and that we see is by entrepreneurship. Anybody will tell you that. That's most millionaires in this country. And that's, you have to create and sell it. And so that is very important, having that intellectual property protected.
Well, Chrissy, that's actually all of my questions. I mean, was there anything else that you'd like to leave the audience and people with?
No, I think we got to the gist of it. Like I said, at basic level, I love to talk about this information because I want people to have it and have an understanding of the differences. Seek out those resources. If you started the process or want to start the process to protecting your intellectual property, it's important. And I also want to drive home, especially for minorities, for women, for small business owners, that this is something that you think about, because a lot of times you don't think about it. And other people know how profitable what you have is, and you want to protect.
Yes.
You want to protect. You may not see it. I mean, I don't know. I'm a faith believer. I know Tony is. You have to be thinking bigger than what your mind and heart can fathom, because God is definitely thinking bigger than you if he put that thought into your head.
Because I'm going to tell you, look, since you brought it up, but not to go too deep, but I tell people all the time, and I usually use this as an example. There is an oak tree in an acorn. Things may start small, but when they're placed in the right soil, in the right ground, and given the right amount of time, you can have a harvest that supersedes anything that first started. And the same aspect to that business thing. It may be small now, but don't despise that small beginning. But you also got to think about it. If you know that you're planting a seed for something, are you willingly going to have it planted on shallow or rocky ground where it isn't very deep? Are you going to, say, for instance, this is a seed, you got birds and stuff coming to peck off of it and all this other stuff. No, you're going to bury it deep as you can. And then you think about it, that's why you have people like Christina, who are attorneys, who actually can come through and help you protect this thing that you have brought from the ether that God has placed in your heart, in your life, and in your mind. You may not know how big it is. You need to treat it like it's the biggest thing ever. And that's brilliant. But I'm just like, if it's yours, care for it. Command ownership of it. Don't let nobody take nothing from you, especially if it's been given to you, but you got to protect it. And I mean, I love how she even said it earlier. It's your business. What you going to do with it? It's like, and that's our responsibility. Are we going to sit here and now that here's a couple things too. And I'm just recapping off of what Christina said, but how, you think about it, there is no new idea. There is nothing brand new. There's one thing I always say all the time. It's like, there is nothing new under the sun. Everything has already been done. But the great thing about it is that you have an ability to put your signature on it, whatever that is.
That's great.
And so it's like, I value this attorney. I keep reaching out because right now she's actually on the screen above me, but she's probably to the left or to the right. I don't really know. But I value the legal mind that she has, the time that she's willing to spend and talk to us and kind of give us insight to let us know, like, look, you have something that could be amazing, but if you don't protect it properly, you're going to be sitting here like wishing you should have, could have, would have, and possibly, hopefully not,
fighting in the legal system, trying to prove that you owned it when you could have spent $45. You could have spent $225. Or even if you want to go to the max, you can spend $600. But it's like, do what you need to do, put the money to the side, maybe your patent, whatever, but care about your stuff because it's yours. And realize you got it. So make it, I don't know, just own it. Like, I just get excited because it's a great opportunity that we have. And, you know, echoing off of what you had mentioned about, you know, like the pandemic and stuff, now it's do stuff. It's like they can really make some amazing things happen. But the question is, how many amazing things made we mad? Then we upset. Then we tell them something, well, such and such stole it. It's something that took them right to court or would have found a way to get, you know, like cease and desist or whatever. You know, there's a reason why, you know, these big brands spend millions and billions of dollars to make sure their legal stuff is together. And the reason it costs as much as you think it does, which I think is just liberating, honestly. Calloway Esquire. I'd like to say thank you, of course, for you doing your thing. I hope, yeah, I might say, okay, making sure you're still connected. But yeah, would you like to have, you know, closing words or anything like that?
No, I just like to thank everybody for joining us and first taking a step. If you have a business or you're a creative, taking a step to even log on to find out this information. That's the first step to getting is getting that information. So you're already ahead of the game. Congrats to you.
Oh, one thing I will mention, tell us about your blog.
Oh, outside of being an attorney, I'm also a lifestyle blogger based in Alexandria, Virginia. And I just like to feature all things lifestyle, style, and local love about Alexandria, Virginia. I love this area and just want to share all the great things. So that's the name that you see on the flyer at Sharp and Sound Style. So feel free to follow me there. And I also have the website, sharpandsound.com, if you want to learn all things lifestyle and learning about Alexandria, Virginia.
Now, let me ask you, have you trademarked your brand?
In the process, we could talk about that.
Okay. I'm just saying, no, real talk. Because here's the thing. Because I know firsthand, we'll, like, you know, as hosts and people that do this stuff, we talk a good game. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, you know, are you practicing what you preach? I had somebody, I had one of my pastor friends tell me, he said, you need to preach what you practice. But from that moment on, it changed my life, because then it's like, how am I going to be who I say that I am while telling other people what they should be doing if I haven't even eaten my own medicine that I'm advising to other people?
Yeah.
But it's a good thing. It's a challenge. Because it's almost like
creators out there who are doing what is called influencing or being an influencer, content creation, digital content creation, that you also need to be thinking about that as well, because you're establishing yourself as a brand and ultimately as a business, even though it's just your personal life. But you also need to be thinking about that as well. So if we have content creators and things like that watching, that's important for you as well.
This was so great. Real quick, I got one more question. I'd like to do this little rapid fire. Top 3 books you would recommend to somebody?
In reference to intellectual,
just whatever. No, that doesn't have to be like, because you might pull out Moody's like law manual or something like
no,
175 pages. Well, you know, on page 1737 in the encyclopedic, like 3 books that you would just recommend to anybody that you
most
enjoy.
Attorneys aren't reading legal stuff, I can tell you that. But books that I've really gotten into, especially during this time, during the pandemic, where we have a little bit more time to reading things. I've been reading Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns. She also has a new book out that's really great. I can't remember the title right now. And I'm also reading a book about since we couldn't travel this year, there's a time in this country where Black people could not travel many places. So I'm reading actually a book about the Green Book, which is a book that African Americans would travel with, so they would know where they could stay, where they could visit, where they could eat, and be safe. And it's very interesting. This didn't happen long ago, so I've been kind of delving deep into some history, into some legacy, since we're going into a lot of social unrest and upheaval during this time, and just understand the plight of people that look like me in this country.
Right. Wow. And that's big. And just to our viewers and everything else, just in case you ever did want to research that green book, it's amazing at what it was. And Christina just explained it. But I've always, it's so funny. Have you seen Lovecraft Country?
I'm watching it.
Yeah. So a part of, in episode 1, that was a whole conversation, was the green book. And I just thought it was so interesting at how, even in these times when, in that time frame, when things were dangerous, but people still had a will to go, and they figured it out. They've like, we got to find people we can connect with. We got to find out ways to be safe. And I mean, I'm just like, I tip my hat to that culture, and I say that only because it's like, that was not easy. But then to be able to still create something to serve people. And I think it's such a great echo, even off of the conversation we had tonight, where, you have an attorney who's here to serve people. So even though I let her get away with 2 books, Christina, unless you have something else, I'm good. I think it was such a great time frame to just talk to you and just kind of just download. I mean, can we give it up for the download? Some great insight and information that was just brought forth. And I think the time was just well spent. Like, I'm just over here, I'm pumped up. I'm like, man, look, I got a book I'm writing like right now. I'm like $45. Okay, we about to have my. But I guess technically I already have my copyright, because once it comes from my head, it becomes tangible, the copyright. But then I have to make sure I register my copyright.
Put the public on notice about it. You're correct.
But I gotta put the public on notice.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope y'all putting the public on notice with everything that you come up with. Much blessing and favor to your businesses. I hope you expand far beyond anything you've ever seen before. I command increase to come to you. I look at it to where we don't always have an opportunity to do something like this. And so when the time frame comes, I hope y'all took some great notes. Feel free to play this over and over again if you need to listen to it to get you some insight. But then follow up to the websites like she mentioned, uspto.gov, copyright.gov, Sharp Sound, was it Sharp Sound?
Sharpandsound.com.
Sharp and Sound, is it .com or and style? Is it which one? Tell it again.
Sharpandsound.com.
So sharpandsound.com. Her IG name is Sharp Sound Style. It's at Sharp Sound.
Sharp and Style.
Let me get this together. It's at Sharp Sound Style.
Sharp and Sound Style. Yes.
It's and or no?
Yes.
Okay, so Sharp Sound and Style. You say it.
Sharp and Sound Style. Just go to the IG page or meet Tony Rouse at Meet Tony Rouse and look at the flyer for this program, and you'll see both of them.
We tagged her at the bottom.
Yep.
But thank you guys so much for joining us. It's just been awesome. So we appreciate everything, and congratulations on success for all of y'all's businesses.
Bye.